America, land of the free and land of opportunity. Why do ordinary Americans hate socialism? Or, if you prefer, why do most hard-working Americans with real jobs hate socialism? Go to any anti-capitalist climate rally and look at the militant Greens and Antifa setting up their hippie tents and vegan food trucks and LGBTQ solidarity stalls and ask yourself, where are the workers? It is the working class, we're told, who have the most to gain by the overthrow of capitalism. It's the workers who are under the heel of the capitalist bosses. It's the workers who are expected to be the agents of social change, rising up and throwing off their chains. But at this posh, effete anti-capitalist jamboree, where are the massed ranks of muscle-bound proletarians? The bricklayers and dockers, miners, truckers, crane drivers, where are the workers from the factories and the building sites and steel mills and railways and ports? Where are the hairdressers and cab drivers and the folk who fill shelves at supermarkets? The workers seem to be slacking. Overthrow capitalism, leave it to someone else, let George do it. Perhaps the proletarian masses are not too worried about the imminent threat of catastrophic climate change. Or perhaps they're not animated by a burning desire to overturn modern industrial consumer society. Maybe they quite like it. Of white American blue-collar workers, 2/3 vote Republican, the pro-capitalist party, 2/3. Forget soak the rich Bernie Sanders, they prefer pro-capitalist billionaire Donald Trump. Same in the UK. The two pro-capitalist parties together, Reform and Tory, have the support of 3 times as many working-class people as supports socialist Labour. 3 times as many. This is an absolute massive working-class rejection of socialism. Why? I first asked myself this decades ago when, as a youth, I was a Marxist. When I used to sell left-wing papers on the streets, actual working-class people just used to roll their eyes and say rude things. The only folk I could interest were university students studying arts or social science degrees who aimed at having lazy careers in the public sector. I've realised over time that it's these people, university-educated tax consumers, who constitute the real core of support for socialist parties. But what of the workers? The question of why the workers are not anti-capitalist is one of the most important questions in modern political philosophy, and yet is one that's rarely directly addressed. So here, from an ex-Marxist, are 5 reasons why I think the workers hate socialism. Please do add more in the comments. Coming in at number 1, they have too much sense. Capitalism has involved the biggest leap forward in the prosperity of ordinary people in the history of the species. In socialist countries that stick to socialist economics, well, take a look at the Soviet Union, North Korea and Venezuela. The amazing power of free market capitalism to generate growth and prosperity, and the amazing power of socialism to destroy it, is obvious to anyone without an arts degree. Across the world, the workers have been voting against socialism with their feet for the best part of a century. Did we see any workers trying to clamber over the Berlin Wall to escape the capitalist West and make it to socialist East Germany? Not one. Are they trying to escape South Korea to reach the communist North? Are they building rickety rafts on the beaches of Florida, hoping to make it to Cuba? Are the workers tripping over themselves to reach basket-case socialist Venezuela? No, they're all desperate to get to capitalist America. After decades of socialist poverty, China found economic success only by allowing capitalism to run riot. Far more so, interestingly, than in the West. People are still trying to escape China, not because of its capitalist economy, but because of its terrifying socialist police state. Intellectuals who sing the praises of communism appear to have no conscience or common sense. Ordinary working people have a strong sense of right and wrong, and common sense in abundance. Number 2, big government. Socialists tell us that high taxes and big government are necessary to fight poverty and inequality. But many ordinary Americans are not convinced. Over the last 20 years, US governments have relentlessly taxed, borrowed and spent. Spent like there's no tomorrow, to the extent that there's now a staggering $40 trillion of government debt. Yet in that time, in real terms, blue-collar wages have flatlined. The poverty rate's the same, and income inequality is said to have gotten worse. Big public spending involves redistribution, not from the rich to the poor. It involves taking money from hard-working, tax-paying Americans in the productive private sector and giving it to the legions of largely college-educated tax consumers in the ever-expanding public and third sectors. to the 30 million people who enjoy an income from government spending, with a combined wage bill of almost $2 trillion a year. But what about the welfare state? The pride of the left, socialism's answer to poverty and inequality. Most working people in America, I have no doubt, believe that we should help those in genuine need, who can't help themselves and have no family or others to lean on. In the 1920s, about 2.5% of total US GDP went on doing just that. But today, around a fifth of America's total economic output goes on welfare. Ordinary working people know about America's gargantuan welfare state because they can see the effects by looking out of the window and walking down the street. They can see the chancers and scallywags claiming unemployment and disability benefits. They can see the young girls getting pregnant to secure housing. They can see the urchin children of single-parent welfare families scrawling on the walls and selling drugs and forming gangs and shooting each other. They resent it. They resent that they go out to work and pay taxes to pay for all this. They resent that their neighborhoods are being trashed and that it's unsafe to walk the streets. In short, they can see that the massive expansion of the welfare system has seduced a large section of society into feckless idleness, pushing them into poverty and misery, leaving them spiritually crushed and hopeless. They've witnessed close up the spectacular collapse of the family caused by big welfare, and the descent of what used to be decent neighborhoods into dispirited hellholes. They can see that big welfare, far from making us more equal, has exacerbated the division between broken, impoverished welfare ghettos and the rest of society. They might also suspect that the real reason socialist intellectuals are blind to these problems and crave ever greater expansion of welfare is because it has added many millions of jobs to the public payroll and has led to a vast transfer of resources and power to public administrators. Welfare allows socialists to adopt a pose of paternalistic altruism and has seduced an ever larger section of the population as the number of welfare recipients expands into perceiving themselves to be reliant on the state, winning much-needed votes from this non-working, tax-sponging section of the population. Ordinary working, tax-paying Americans miss the things that big welfare has done so much to destroy: individual independence, self-reliance and responsibility, the moral obligation to the person you have a child with, the mutual support that used to come from stable families, from communities of neighbors, local churches and synagogues. All the stuff that socialist intellectuals find creepy and right-wing. Number 3. State schools. Working class people hate sending their children to crappy state schools. Socialists insist that essential services like schools are better provided by the state, by themselves, than by the free market. That's because socialists much prefer working in the public sector than the horrid private sector. In the public sector, they find themselves with total job security, sheltered from tiresome market forces, given a generous pension, and importantly, they experience the pleasant sensation of becoming less accountable to the people they're supposed to serve. Government provision for services includes a fundamental shift of power away from ordinary people. Teachers in government schools can be less attentive to the views and feelings of fussy parents. They can teach what they like, how they like, as lazily as they like, and parents have to suck it up. The parents are not market consumers of such services who can take their custom elsewhere. Payment for these services is extracted forcibly in advance from taxation. For socialists, it matters less that these services are any good than that they remain firmly under the control of the state. They are appalled if working-class parents demand to take their children out of badly managed, underperforming government-run schools and send them instead to high-achieving private charter schools. To the socialists, that the state should retain control of education is more important than lifting the quality of education received by working-class children. Number 4. Basic values. Working-class Americans value different things to our louche, sophisticated left-wing intelligentsia. The working class values hard work, saving, marriage, patriotism, tolerance, a sense of humour, a recognition and celebration of traditional gender differences, hatred of pomposity, a suspicion of experts and jargon. They believe in the Second Amendment. They value individual freedom. The list goes on and on. They dislike contemporary art, where you take some soup tins and fill them with poo. They think that's not deep and insightful. They think it's pretentious and designed to make the class who embrace it feel superior. It makes them angry. There is, in short, across a huge range of things, a gulf, culturally, between the workers and socialist intellectuals. And this spills over into economics. Working people are suspicious of governments that print money, that rack up truly enormous public debts, that spend money recklessly and frivolously. In other words, socialism. Number 5. Socialist hatred of mass production. In the old days, red socialists claimed, at least, to be on the side of the workers. Under socialism, they said, we'd have more and bigger factories. Socialism would outdo capitalism in showering the workers with material goods like cars and washing machines and TVs. But today's green socialists shudder at the very thought of greater mass consumption. The factory is a symbol of evil. One green group even organised a puke-in at a shopping mall, so disgusted were they by ordinary people buying stuff. Mass production is soulless, mass consumption a threat to the planet. In anti-capitalist green literature, the anti-consumerist rant is relentless. It's not their consumption that upsets them. It's not the tasteful consumption of the green new class intelligentsia that distresses posh anti-capitalists. The well-to-do Greens do not rage against expensive organic free-range food, or handmade cashmere sweaters, or imported Italian floor tiles. They like those. They do not disparage posh cheese shops or contemporary art fairs. The problem is not their consumption, the problem is gaudy, soulless mass consumption. Top tip: if a manufacturer of shampoo or coffee or whatever else wants to appeal to the exclusive, snobbish socialist intelligentsia, they must package and brand their product carefully. Forget the garish colours and the brash logo and the boast of how cheap it is. Packaging must be discreet, minimalist, as if it's holding its nose against the stink of the mass market. The product must appear as if it's been handcrafted expensively in some workshop, rather than churned out cheaply in a factory. It's essentially the same shampoo, but will cost many times more than the shamelessly mass-produced version. But to the socialist snob, it's worth the extra, to announce their distance from and superiority to the mass market, and the masses themselves. And the same goes for the green outrage at mass tourism. When the socialist intelligentsia goes abroad, it's mind-expanding travel. When the working and commercial middle classes do it, it's ecologically destructive, culturally insensitive mass tourism. For these sensitive socialist snobs, it is the masses themselves who are the problem. Socialist intellectuals, let me say now, are snobs. And the workers know it. They can feel it. They understand it. This is why they don't join the socialists on their anti-capitalist climate rallies. Far from championing the cause of the toiling masses, today's green socialists are scornful of them. The workers are the problem. It is they who are the mass consumers in the reviled mass consumer society. It is the working masses who fill the airplanes and are guilty of mass tourism. It is to provide the masses with affordable chicken sandwiches that chickens are battery farmed. It is to provide the masses with cheap food that vile industrial agriculture is practiced. It is for the sake of providing the masses with cheap products that the capitalists have erected their frightful factories. It is for the greedy masses that the world is plagued by well-lit shopping malls and hypermarkets. It's for the aspiring masses that multi-lane highways and gas-guzzling cars and the vulgar suburbs were built. It is not the failure of capitalism to shower the masses with products and services that so upsets today's posh anti-capitalists, but its success in doing so. The working and commercial middle classes, it should come as no surprise, are rather happy to be mass consumers. They're delighted by the extraordinary range of pleasing commodities and services they can now afford. They quite like the cars and the central heating and the back gardens and foreign holidays and TV sets and computers. They do not see their own lifestyles as excessive. They do not consider themselves greedy. They can see the hypocrisy when well-to-do upper-middle-class green socialists tell them to tighten their belts. They're not amused when the socialists sneer at the ignorant backward deplorables in Middle America, Middle England, the flyover states, and the soulless sprawling suburbs. And understandably for their part, the masses look with resentment and disdain on the snooty culture and pretensions of left-wing intellectuals. They can smell the class bigotry behind this posh anti-capitalism. That is why so many working-class people are attracted to politicians who proclaim themselves to be decidedly pro-capitalist and anti-establishment. It is this class animus that's behind what Orwell called the ordinary man's recoil from socialism. And posh anti-capitalism is the subject of my next film. I'm Martin Durkin, and this is Guerrilla Science.